I'm Ben Ryman, and this is Behavior Speak. In this conversation, Dr. Iman Farajallah shares her profound experiences and insights as a psychologist working with trauma, particularly in war zones like Gaza. She discusses her personal background, the impact of war trauma on children, and her efforts to give a voice to those affected. The conversation also touches on the challenges of mental health support in Gaza and the concept of complex continuous trauma, highlighting the ongoing struggles faced by the Palestinian population. The conversation delves into the profound and complex trauma experienced by the population of Gaza, particularly focusing on the impact of children. The discussion also highlights the continuous nature of trauma, the intergenerational effects, and the parallels with other marginalized communities. Dr. Farajallah shares insights from her work training first responders and supporting refugees, as well as her personal journey of healing through spirituality. I'm doing very good. How are you?
Good.
Wonderful. Great to have you here. Before we get started, I just want to acknowledge I'm producing this podcast on the territories of the Kalamin Klehus Homoko Comox and Sechelt First Nations. And as always, I'm grateful to be here. So Dr. Iman, tell me a little bit about yourself and your work.
Basically, I'm doctor of psychology. I practice in California in the Bay Area. I focus on I work with different population. I have been working with addiction. Have been working with population who suffer from depression. I have been working with population who worked with anxiety, OCD, all kinds. But really my passion is, and I like to work with people who have experienced trauma in their life, but also I have, written about that and in more exclusive way, especially the effect of trauma in war zones and how it impact the population of specifically children and women. So I have a lot of passion to that.
And tell me a little bit about sort of how that interest developed and why war and war trauma is of particular interest for you.
I think it relates to my background and who I am. The fact that I was born in a war zone, it made the difference. I was born initially in Gaza, Palestine. I was myself, was born to a refugee family who were pushed away from Jaffa and Beersheba, Beersheba, and to Gaza. They are a refugee family who relocated within Palestine into Gaza. And I was born to this family. And as also I was living there, I was experiencing a trauma myself by, experiencing what it feels like to live under the occupation, beaten up by the occupation, being shot by the occupation, being jailed by the occupation, seeing my family members being, suffering from the occupation. That where really the passion has developed for me to work with people who have experienced war and trauma.
And is this why you went into psychology to do this work?
To be honest with you, as my story about psychology and why I went into psychology is also rooted in Palestine, and it's actually motivated by my life story. Beginning when I finished my high school, I actually studied history and political science. And then I studied international relations.
Wow.
And the reason I studied international relations is the fact that I wanted to change the world. I don't want to see no more conflicts. I didn't want to see no more wars. I want peace. Also to advocate for Palestine and basically to see one day, liberated Palestine, that we can live, in peace. I started going to school, and then I actually went to San Francisco State University, and then I had the privilege to get to win a scholarship where I can go to the NATO to be trained on conflict resolution and conflict management. And I saw how the dynamic was there. And then I saw also we were working actually on solving the issue between South Sudan and Sudan. And I actually lost every hope with politicians Let's put it this way. And I came to the conclusion that every country is going to do whatever they're going to do in order for them basically to gain their political gains. Not many politicians are thinking about the people. And after that, I myself became more of a practicing Muslim and I started learning about Islam. One of the things that stopped me of the teaching of Prophet Muhammad, peace be on him, that basically if you make an impact in someone's life, even if it's one person, it is an impact and it's valued. And it's basically you always start with yourself, how you change then you with your family, then with your neighbor, then with the rest of the society. That for me, that stopped me. It's like if I can change one person's life at one time, I'm making a difference. Therefore, from there, I switched totally from political science to actually and international relations to psychology. And if I said to myself, if I could make a difference in someone's life, then that is my chance. That is my impact that I'm going to do in this world.
Wow. What I'm hearing is you're in international relations and sort of political science and learning about conflict resolution. You're with NATO. Really interesting background to kind of feed into the work you're doing today. But also, it sounds like you felt like there was really no hope in that work because no one was ever going to change. The politics weren't going to change. The governments weren't going to change. When you found psychology and sort of learned that, and through the teachings of Muhammad, that just you can affect change in just one person and really make a huge difference. That must have been a real motivator for you.
Is you have to choose between being a person who's just maybe lost hope in the world and humanity and human beings, and between a person who can actually do, even if it means a little change. You are here on this earth to make a difference and to impact other people's life. You are not here just to live and just to go. And that was for me the essential thing. How can I if I could not make a difference in terms of politics and in terms of relationships within countries and within big societies, how can I make a difference within human being lives and how can I make a difference in one individual, how can I make a difference in one individual life at a time? And that's what really inspired me.
And so when did you kind of first start doing work to sort of help folks in Gaza?
I always been, since I was born, I always worked in Gaza. I grew up, you have to understand then, I grew up as a child on the Israeli soldiers climbing the walls of our home, taking my brothers away from us, beating my mom, beating my father, beating us. An Uzi over our head or while we are asleep, to wake us up and take whoever they want. So since I started to realize life, it's been my life. So Gaza for me and the trauma that the children face in Gaza is basically, it's been a life story for me. And that's why, I focus a lot in my research on trauma and children, because I felt like I lived the Intifada in Palestine. I was myself shot, jailed by the Israelis. A lot of my family members were taken away from us. We were beaten up until bleeding. When I was a child, I did not have someone who came and asked me, "How do you feel?" Or if this is a trauma and how can we help you? Even my trauma has not been even acknowledged. And therefore, my research started on Gaza as I started my psychology degree in 2001, because I wanted to uplift the voices of these children. I want to uplift the voices of these women. I wanted to actually give a voice to these, I call it giving a voice to the voiceless, which is basically the Palestinian children in particular. Because maybe as a grown up, maybe I can go after, you grow up, you can go to your friend, to your family, talk about how you feel, but the children have no avenue where to go. And therefore, I wanted to give a voice to these children to talk about the trauma, the trauma they experienced during the wars on Gaza and under the Israeli occupation. Believe it or not, since the day one I went to psychology, I wanted to do my dissertation on the children of Palestine. Again, as I told you, the reason being is I was a child and I was reading one time a book about the children of the Intifada and how they were like, nobody even know about their trauma. And that was for me, like, that was me when I was a child. Now it's my chance actually to go and in depth and discuss that with the children who are currently under the war in Gaza. When I told that to my professors, they were telling me like, you're crazy. You're going to the war zone. And, I remember one of my professors, Dr. Fred, he was like, I am not going to allow you to go there. And I said, I am going to do it. But when I came back actually and with my dissertation and with the work I have done, and he sat on my committee, he said to me very, very like a sentence that was like hard work. Was like, people like you, Iman, makes me stay in this field because
Wow.
you are the ones who make a difference in people's life. By you going there and giving voice to these children, it's a huge difference. So that was, my when I started like really literally start working and preparing for it. And then I went back to Gaza, sat there for about 3 months, and I interviewed the children.
Wow.
And I interviewed women as well. And I was focused mainly on children, and therefore, like my research was focused on children and their experiences. I still have, and I still obtained the videos on the interviews with the women, and I'm hoping one day also that is gonna come to life as well, and I'm gonna, write about it or at least make a documentary about it.
Wow, amazing. Tell me about first off, tell me about how that was received. Were the children and the women eager to talk to you? Was it difficult to sort of make those connections and start having those conversations?
No, it was received really well, I will have to say, and people were very cooperative. Children, first of all, the center is located in Gaza, and the doctors in Gaza, they really were very supportive and very helpful. And they put me in touch with their clients who come to the center. Gaza program for mental health. I was able to go and visit them in their homes to these individuals and talk to them and talk to their parents and talk to the children. Honestly, they wanted to talk about what they have been through. Although it was very traumatizing for them to talk about it.
I bet.
But the good thing was that the program for mental health in Gaza was very supportive. So even like if anything was like to be triggered with the children or with the family, and God, somebody who's backing me up, and I can immediately, we can have someone there who can work with them or refer them to the center and work with them. So it was really a beautiful experience. Until today, it was a very hectic experience because it was
Yeah.
very like for 3 months you wake up every day from 7 o'clock in the morning, you're on the road until like 10 o'clock in the evening on the road, going from like south to north or from north to south or from east to west, of Gaza to interview, because I try to capture as many areas in Gaza as I can. It was really received by the people there very well, because people want to talk about these experiences. People want to talk. Palestinians want, and children want to talk about what is really happening to them. And especially that, as you know, nowadays in Gaza, there is like journalists, foreign journalists, and, a lot of academics, Western academics and everything. They cannot actually, and they are not allowed by Israelis. And so this is an opportunity for them. And they all were aware, like even they signed the release that, for me to use their stories for my publication and for my video. They were really, I remember the children. I hope one day you will watch my documentary, but there is only the trailer of the documentary on my website. And you see the kids, they were really excited about participating in the documentary.
And so is that documentary available?
Yes, it is available for actually, if it's not available like for public. However, go by invitation. If people invite to screen it in their area, I would go and show it, because it's really important for me not only just to show the documentary, but also the second part of showing the documentary is the questions and answers, and people and being there and answering people questions and touching on their feedback, because it's really important for people to understand the background of what is really been happening in the background when I was doing this documentary, and also explaining to the people the difference between Gaza at the time when I was actually doing this documentary versus Gaza that is today, that is totally bombed and erased. It's really important that for people also to understand that Gaza was full of life, and people loved life, and they want and love to smile and love to interact with other people, and very hospitable and all that stuff. And now is all that is being unfortunately erased.
So tell me about, you said obviously that that these interviews kind of rehashed some traumatic experiences for folks. What kinds of questions were you asking the children?
Really, it was more of an open-ended. It wasn't like precisely like, okay, tell me on this date what happened to you. No, it's like very kindly, like questions like, I know that you were shot during the war in 2014. Can you tell me a little bit about what happened? And people start telling the story, and then many times, like one of the children, Yazan, he would say to me, every time I hear the drone, I would hide. I would run away and hide under the blanket. And then I would ask him, like, where would you hide? He said, there. I said, where? And he would say to me, in the room. And I said, what you do in the room? He's like, I turn off the lights, and then I would actually hide underneath the blanket. And then I asked him, why would you hide underneath the blanket? And then he said, when they hit me, the missiles down into the house, so I wouldn't be hurt. So it's like a questions that follow questions based on the story. On another occasion, for example, I interviewed one child, his name is Muhammad, who actually they had bombed their home with a missile that had his head open, totally open. And then he had in his hands pictures of him when he was, and, talking about that. And then when I re-interviewed him in 2021, asking and recapping, how did it feel for you? What did it trigger the war of 2021? What did it trigger in you? Like, and then he would talk about like how he was really getting nervous, anxious, how he was so scared and fearful that he might have another injury, this war again, so it's kind of like open-ended.
Yeah. And so you interviewed some of these kids in 2018 and then again in 2021?
In 2016 and then in 2021. I followed them actually like for some times. And you'll see like in the documentary, it will show like Yazan when he was in 2016. And he was only like, I think 8 years old versus when he was like 14 years old in 2021, I believe. And you can see everything, but is like no matter how old or how young they are, the scars in their bodies and in their heads and their faces is still there and still showing.
So what were some other stories that kind of sit with you and have really kind of shaped kind of some of the work you're doing today?
All these stories of all these kids were like really for me shaped the way I work and made me like during this war in 2023, 2024, 25 to actually write more about his children and interview them. And people actually down in Gaza interview them. Sometimes I would interview them over the phone and talk to them and talk about what is really happening. And at that time in 2014, like when that war happened, to be honest with you, Ben, I was thinking this is the worst war that we ever had experienced as Palestinians or I have seen in my life. And therefore, this is why I felt the urge I need to talk about this because this is not acceptable. Killing kids in masses like that, the highest percentage of, or a high percentage of the people who were killed were children and women, and not thinking that there is an awful genocide is coming. I wasn't of that. All their stories sits with me, but when I actually interviewed the 2024 story, there is other stories that now sits for me that is chilling. Like when I interviewed one child that actually she witnessed the Israeli soldier killing her father in front of her, the worst thing that child can witness. And then she would describe how they actually dragged him, took him in a separate room, and they told her and her mom under the gun force that you need to leave. And they refused to leave. And they said, I want to go out from the school building with my daddy. And he told her, you want daddy? Okay, we'll let him go out with you. So they would grab her daddy, bring the daddy in front of her, and then they shoot him and kill him and said, now can you go? Oh, so it's like these stories, they sit with you and you feel as a psychologist or as a human being helpless and not knowing what to do. Like one of the stories that sits with me from the 2016 I interviewed was two twins, I'm sorry, sisters who actually they are on the cover of my book. One is really, she was very little. She was, I think, 4 or 5. And the other one was at 12 or 13. And that during the war of 2014, Israeli killed her mother, her father, her home, and two of them were shot. Had sit with me and sat with me and until today is how the 13 years old was after all these experiences and not being able even to talk about her trauma to anybody, how she's playing the role of a mother for the 5 years old and how she is on constant stress and anxiety thinking about what if there's another war with a breakdown, how I'm going to protect she said, this is her sentence, how we're going to protect these children. Totally dismissed the fact that even she herself is a child. And she felt like responsible and she felt like as that she is a mother that who needs to take care of her sibling. And when they talk about, like when they describe how the Israeli gradually, like how they bombed their home and they were about to get injured. And in order for them, the sisters not to get injured, their brother would jump to protect them, but then the shell would hit him and kill him. And then after that, the little sister would get like injured in her hand. And then they actually put poisonous gas. The Israeli like bombed them with poisonous gas in the house as well. And then how the mother like actually inhaled that poisonous gas and slowly how she was dying in front of her 13 years old. So these are like chilling stories that, it reminds me a lot of my own childhood. One occasion when the Israeli soldiers came to arrest one of my brothers, he came to the house, and when we saw the soldier that they are coming to take him, so he ran away. And how they actually beated us, all of us, my mother, me, my sister, my father, and in the end followed my brother. They kept running after my brother. Then they arrested my other brother and my father, so my brother would tell him. And after that, like maybe in an hour or so, they arrested my brother, and how is like he was bleeding from his chest, from his neck, and everywhere from. And how that actually, impacted us. Like now we didn't even lose one brother. They took my father, my brother, and my other brother. And now we're seeing like my brother bleeding in front of us and we cannot do nothing. We cannot help him.
Wow.
These are the kind of stories that sits with me and makes me eager to always give a voice to people or to children who experience this kind of experiments.
I have no words. So I'm curious about, you talked a bit about how there were some supports in Gaza for folks. What sort of supports existed at the time, and do those even exist today?
At the time of my research, there was the Gaza program for mental health. They were stretching out themselves throughout Gaza. There were also some psychologists who are affiliated with the health ministry in Gaza, but it wasn't enough. I think in the whole Gaza, you can count them on your finger how many psychologists or psychiatrists who can help the population. There was a great need for more psychologists and psychiatrists and therapists to be involved. And because the disparity is really big and it's much needed. However, today, if we look and, if we look at the mental health, it's not even being talked about right now. Maybe the UN mentioned like we are in need. There is a mental health, support is needed in Gaza, but really like now there isn't. There isn't. It's more. It's like we can say to non-existence. And the reason why, as like I said in my research, and I continue to say this, like Save the Children at the time of when I did my paper and my dissertation, the study, and found out that there is a higher percentage of the Palestinian population, 95% of the children, they are traumatized. And that's a conclusion I did in my research too as well. At that time, it was 95%. I can say very simply today that 100% of the Palestinian population is traumatized. Israel has tried to do through the practices that they have been doing, basically trying to, and I said that before, to create a traumatized nation. What is the purpose of, this is not during the 2023, this is throughout since long time ago, maybe say we can say from 2002, 2005, I'm sorry, on like, why would you have drones, civilians, people 24/7 buzzing above your head, shilling people? People hear about like, and especially here in the West, maybe we hear about like the big things, like when there is a huge war and there is a high escalation, but people don't know about the daily life of Palestinians in Gaza. Before this war, I went to visit my family. As we were there, they were bombing Gaza. We were there from June to, I believe, August or September, in 2022. And they were bombing Gaza. My father, who actually died in this war.
Oh, I'm sorry.
When they bombed, I was like, he used to like sleeping outside in like under the tree, and I was rushing from the building to go like grab him, and he's like, "Why are you doing this?" They basically got used to it. Like, why are you doing this? Like, let's say that they did bomb here, die too. And this is what we witnessed. My uncle during this war bombed the house. My cousin ran to protect or to carry his father, who's 95 years old, take him out of the building. They hit him with a second shell. They killed both of them. So this is the reality that Palestinians are experiencing in Gaza. And, and I think a lot of people are not aware that these experiences hasn't happened just from today or from, October of 2023. It's been there. People wake up and sleep hearing, the drones above their head, either bombing them or either, civilianing them. And it's basically is a miserable life to live there, because even if you build a home, you don't know if this home gonna stay or not. If you make a business, you don't know if tomorrow you're gonna lose the business because the Israelis just bombed it. So these are the type of experiences that Gaza or the Palestinians who live in Gaza experience on daily life, but nobody talks.
Well, this might be a good sort of transition to this idea of complex continuous trauma, because it sounds like what you're essentially saying is that these folks live this every single day of their lives, and they always have. You went to visit, and it was a bit of shock to your system because you hadn't seen it in a while, but your family was just used to seeing the bombing, and they weren't even reacting in some ways because it was just something that's happening all the time, constantly having drones flying over them, constantly living in fear whether a bomb is coming or not. And so you've written a lot about this concept of complex continuous trauma, and sort of compared it to sort of PTSD, which is often the way a lot of these effects are framed. So can you talk a little bit about how you came up with that concept and kind of how it differs from PTSD?
So in order for us to make people understand what I mean when I talk about complex continuous, you have to have like some sort of historical. This is where my maybe political science and history and all that's come into play of what really have or what have Palestinians. I'm going to take an example for you. My dad, who passed away this year in the war in December 2024. My dad was born and raised in Be'er Saba. My mom was born and raised in Jaffa. Or Yafa. They were pushed, both of them, to Gaza. They met in Gaza and they got married. And that's what we call in psychology experiencing generational trauma. If people want to really understand what is generational trauma, is look at the Jewish people and what they experienced after the Holocaust and how generational trauma has been passed from one generation to another generation because of the fear that has been installed within the Jewish due to what they have experienced, in the Holocaust and during the time of the Nazis. My dad, the first thing, we have the British mandate in 1917 to Palestine. Then he had to go through experiencing the war of 1948. Then he has to experience the war of 1967. Then he has to experience the war 1973. And he has to experience again the war of 1982. And then he has to experience the first Intifada in 1987 to 1991. Then he has to experience the second Intifada 2000 to 2005. Then the Israeli war in 2008 to 2009. Then the Israeli war on Gaza 2012. And then the Israeli war on Gaza 2014. The war on Gaza 2021. Then the Israeli war on Gaza 2023, 24, 25. Here's a simple example of a human being living in Gaza. His life is a war. I look at him and I used to say he's like a walking trauma. If we look at his life in details, he has his land because his sister and her kids, they still live until today in Be'er Saba. Of course, his sister passed away, which is he couldn't see or say goodbye to. And I was able to go and visit her before when it was strict for us to go. And I could see our land. I could see our previous homes and everything. And basically, everything has been taken away from him in 1948. He came to Gaza. He rebuilt his life in 1967, finished his education, his home, got married, have some of his kids. 1967 came, everything is gone again. The war 1973 comes and everything goes again. His kids grow up, the first Intifada, some of them they get jailed, some of them they get shot, some of them they get deported. 2000, 2005, the second Intifada, the same story continues. And then 2012, 14, 21, he loses some of his relatives, some of his family. Again, he loses everything. He rebuilds. So you are continuously the terms of losing and rebuilding, losing and rebuilding. But what you are losing, this is really important for people to understand. Sometimes people think that Gaza means losing a piece of land. You are not losing only a piece of land. You are losing the neighborhood you grew up in, the school you went, the mosque or church you used to pray in. The network of neighbors and families, since we are a collective society that lives together, we are not individual society focused only on the person. You are losing all that. You are losing your business. You are losing everything. So when you are actually losing, you cannot say that I just got injured or I just witnessed the death of. No, you are witnessing the death of someone that you love. You are witnessing that you are losing the neighborhood you grew up in. You are losing your relatives. You are losing your business. You are losing the mosque you pray in or the church you pray in. You are losing your neighbors. So basically, when you look at it as a person who living that sort of a trauma, are really losing or you are looking at multi layers of a trauma. If not we define it trauma. We define it trauma by somebody who's actually either something has happened to them or they witness something happening to someone.
Yes.
But imagine yourself as a human being, one shot, you are losing maybe a child, the mosque, the community, the business, maybe even losing a limb. A lot of the kids I have interviewed lost either their eyesight, their limbs, and in the film it shows one of the people I have interviewed was Wael and his son. One of them lost one of his limb and the other one lost his limb and his eye and his hand sort of also. It was disturbing scenery to see how both of them are hubbing while they're walking next to each other, hubbing on one leg. Father and his son. And here is the father living this trauma of losing his leg, losing his wife. His wife was also severely injured. losing his home, losing his brother, his sister-in-law, their kids. Now he's sitting with me talking about, sit and think about my child. Here's my child. He doesn't see anymore. Like he lost his eye. He hopped on one leg, and I don't know how he's going to be even received by the kids if he goes to school. I don't know if he will have the opportunity to go to school or not. And I do not know how the kids will receive him, if they will be nice and friendly to him or they will be mean. So it's all that together. We'll see that basically these children or these individuals are actually suffering from layers over trauma, that you cannot just tackle one aspect of it and leave the other. And this is why when we look at the trauma in the population of Gaza, we cannot really label it as a PTSD or just continuous trauma. We have to be clear that it's continuous. It's not PTSD, because PTSD is basically you are talking about a trauma that you have experienced. And we know also when we are treating trauma, the first step is like removing that person outside of the environment that they are in, so they wouldn't be exposed to it again. But Gaza is a big, huge concentration camp. Moving them where? They have choice where to go, and they have, unfortunately, to experience and endure whatever the Israeli is going to actually put on them, and they have nowhere to go. Because I don't know if people are aware or not, but Gaza is like basically like a big concentration camp that has only two gates. One is controlled by the Israelis, one is controlled by the Egyptians. And this is why people now are suffering from starvation, because no food is allowed from the Israeli side or from the Egyptian side. And, you know, when Israel give the orders to the Egyptian to close the borders, you close the borders. People have nowhere to go. In order for you even to travel somewhere, you have brilliant, and this is why I think I don't know what is the Israeli policy around like killing all engineers, all doctors, educated people, destroy universities. Gaza was like one of the continent, one of the cities in the world that was like you cannot find people who cannot read and write in Gaza. Barely you can find it. They have a brilliant, doctors, engineers. I think what Israel tried to do within this war, addition to creating a traumatized nation, is trying to actually create a population that is I don't know what is the word for it, but it's like that illiterate or literate, like basically who are not knowledgeable, who does not read or write or stuff like that. That's what I feel like really is really happening by depriving them. Otherwise, why would you bomb schools? Why would you bomb universities? Right. Why would you kill scholars? So this is like, for me, puts everything like into question. Why would you have these policies? It is really important to understand that. So this is why I describe it more of a complex continuous trauma than like a trauma or PTSD or continuous trauma. We have layers of trauma that one individual can experience at the time. And we have also generational trauma that also exists there. Because like here I am as an individual, I'm experiencing, for example, the war 24 or the Intifada. Here I'm going through the fact that, I'm being bombed. My school is being bombed. My university is being bombed. My neighbors are being killed. Maybe I lost a limb. Maybe while my dad, who's 85 years old, sitting there also telling me about his own trauma and what he has experienced. And that was really happening. Funny enough is like I have interviewed, I had one of my nieces interview my dad of 2024. We told him, tell us about what happened, when you left Palestine and all this. And he was saying I witnessed so many wars. This was the worst war we have experienced. So here you're dealing with both, as an individual who is sitting there experiencing the war. And at the same time, you have no support, or you're deprived even food or shelter. This is why it's really important for us when we look at the trauma, especially in Gaza, it's unique in itself. And many times in order for me, myself, to understand what is really and how is the Israeli policies are affecting Palestinians in Gaza. I really look into and try to study how the Holocaust and the genocide against Jewish people affected the Jewish population, their way of thinking, their way of coping, and how it's affecting to them until today. Cannot say easily that what happened in 23, 24, 25, even if the war to stop now, how is going to affect the generations to come. That's something that for the future to be seen, you know?
And sort of what were some of the things you kind of found with sort of post-Holocaust in terms of sort of the intergenerational, effects on folks?
So when I was doing actually about I was actually studying a little bit about the Holocaust and how, trauma affect them. It's like, is basically there is few elements. First of all, trauma and ecologically affect the children of the people who survived the Holocaust, and how listening to their maybe grandchildren or to their parents about their hunger, loss, fear, the violence they have witnessed, and how they passed all these feelings to their children right now, and how the children, they feel the anxiety and the depression, and also the survivor guilt, that they have. And this is why you find sometimes like there's Jewish individuals who would stand up and who's like, not in our name, and now, not again, not forever, because they know what it feels like, and they know that, the survivor guilt that they have, that they cannot allow this happening. The other thing is like when you look at the Holocaust and how it impacted the Jewish population, loss of family, the loss of identity, is really significant to these children. It's basically losing your siblings, your family members, during the Holocaust. You are losing a structure, the family, you are losing the support you are, that you have received from this family, whether emotional, psychological support or financial support, all that is gone. Then how family were separated from each other. Like some of them, they had to go to different countries, different places. And that is also, with that, you are losing cultural identity and culture and religious identities. And this is really important. The physical health and, displacement that they had to endure, the educational and social, challenges that they have to experience, when kids are actually who survived trying to reintegrate to new society and adapt to a new society with the new cultures, way of life, while they are enduring prejudice, discrimination, stigma against them. All this would affect the individual, and also would actually sort of not eliminate, but actually discourage, or basically affect their way of like education opportunities or social interactions. And this is all important. And that's exactly when you look at the war in 2023, 24, 25, and before that against the population in Gaza. It's unfortunate that Israeli is using the same methodology. And this is why it's sometimes it's puzzling to me, is like, because they say like people who experience this will not allow others to endure this. Definitely, when you see that people who are victim of it, they are doing it, is like you have to question how much was the damage that's been made by the Nazis towards the Jewish population, and is also the Jewish population really have to put to a question, did they move on from what has happened to them or not? Important to revisit.
No, that's an important point. I mean, if you think of even just about sort of folks in North America experiencing child abuse or things like that, and how that kind of translates into parenting if they don't get things treated, I can imagine sort of on a more kind of global scale how a generation of people who didn't heal could definitely have some strong
some
feelings.
egregious.
Yeah. I mean, some of this also reminds me of a lot of the conversations I've had on the podcast with Indigenous folks and sort of their stories of intergenerational trauma and suffering. Do you see some sort of parallels there?
Absolutely. When we are talking about Native Americans and what they have experienced, of course, they've been stripped out of their land, their culture, religious identity. They had to experience and endure a lot of torture and extermination. And even now they are in their own land and they cannot even call it that it's their land.
Mm-hmm.
No, not to say like some of them had to maybe to live in concentration camps. I call it these reservation concentration camps where unfortunately they depend on drugs and alcohol to survive. And of course, it's very similar to what has been happening before and what has been happening to Palestinians now. We cannot like just close a blind eye and say it happened to one population and didn't happen to the other. It's unfortunate, it's upon us as human beings, at least if we could not help and undo what has been done wrong, at least to recognize that what has been done is wrong, and to admit to that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I had read that some of the sort of designs for the concentration camps during the Holocaust were influenced by the residential boarding schools and sort of the activities that were happening in there, and that Hitler kind of learned from the traumas that the North American folks imparted on indigenous peoples and kind of translated some of that into his atrocities.
I mean, yeah, they can learn from that, and they can learn from the time of before that, the Crusades, and what they have done to the indigenous population in Spain and Europe who were Muslims or Jewish with Queen Elizabeth. People and trying to convert them to Christianity, then you will be persecuted and killed. And, some of the images that I seen like through only theaters and movies done by some artists in Europe is very ugly to see the way how they used to kill people because they didn't want to convert to Christianity. So it's a method that is being used throughout the history, and it's an ugly method. And, it's the only thing is like, or the sad thing is like, human beings don't learn from it seems like it. And unfortunately, the only thing we learn from it is like, how can we capitalize on it and make it more ugly and use it against another population?
Kind of circling back to Palestine and this complex continuous trauma, kind of, it sounds pretty hopeless in a lot of ways and sort of never ending. What are some of the things that can be done that you're doing to sort of help the folks right now in Gaza?
Before I answer that question, I would just want to go back into something really important because I want people really to understand not only for those who actually suffer from the trauma, but also for those who are in the mental health field and who try to understand the trauma, complex continuous trauma that has been happening with the Palestinian population. Point that my research had led me to find out that Palestinians, and especially Palestinian children, are suffering from signs of trauma, like as I said, in multiple, I'm more than in several layers, but these I can categorize them that into like in terms of behavior, there is behavioral signs that you can see, there is cognitive signs that you can see in one child, and in emotional signs that you can see, and also there is physical signs that you can see. And some people they could actually argue with me that maybe physical signs are not considered mental health, but I will argue back and say it is, and I will explain why. But tapping on behavioral science, I found out that these children, a lot of the signs that they are experiencing, like continuously crying, difficulties in staying still in one place, they are reckless, difficulties in complying with orders and following the rules of the house, dreaming, social withdrawing, wetting their bed, fear of darkness. As I told you the story of Yazan, who is scared now of darkness, always have like the there's a flashback. I had some women who have told me, and mothers, that their children, although that they are 15, some of them 14, they would not in the night go to the bathroom. But they have to wake their mother in order for them to go to the bathroom. If they want something from the kitchen, they always have to have one of their parents go with them. Have difficulty sleeping. And some of them, they actually, instead of being defiant, they would be avoidant. In terms of their cognitive signs, a lot of them, they experience confusion, lack of concentrations. Like I had one mother who has told me, Iman, when I send my kids to school, they're supposed to be learning in the school, but when they go to school, they come back and they have learned nothing. And she's like, I don't know what this teacher is doing, why she's not learning. And then when she contact the teachers, like, yeah, we went over the lesson, we did this, that. But that mother is not understanding the fact that her actually child is suffering from trauma. And she is not comprehending the fact that her child, most of the children in Palestine or in Gaza, they walk to the school. They don't like have buses or anything. So while he's walking, has this, drone buzzing over his head. He is wondering and thinking, is it going to bomb me? Is it going to bomb my home? Is it going to bomb my school? He already experienced, maybe he's walking to the school with no breakfast. He's hungry because his family cannot even afford to put a breakfast on the table. Like, all these things. Or maybe his father is shot, or his mother is shot, and he's thinking about, or his mother has cancer and thinking about, is she going to die, or that, the fear that he carries with him. So our parents are not aware that this is all happening with the kids. And then, they expecting them to go to school and to receive education well, and also to be brilliant, So these are things that really we need to think about. Moving on in terms of like emotional signs that these kids exhibit is like they have anxiety, they like sadness, fear of the future, listlessness, instability, and hopelessness. And also, one of the signs I noticed at the children in children in Gaza, and now even like when I talk to my own family, the little nieces and that we have, and they experience is wetting their bed. They wet their bed, and although they are body trained, they are 5 years old or 10 years old, but they still wet their bed, and this is continuous, and the shivering, like their body shivers all the time, and they stop talking, they are stunned. These are the things that, they experience. Now, also physical signs that these children experience. And these physical signs could be the scars and the wounds that is in their body that's been left as a part of the injury. It could be actually another thing that is I noticed at most of the people who experience or live the war, that they have missiles splinters or the fragments all over their body. It could be in their face, it could be in their chest. The mother has it, the children have it. Some of them they lose their limbs, some of them they lose their eyesight. Some of them, they have swellings. Some of them have like general fatigue, headache. And these are all like swellings in their throat, vomiting, diarrhea. And these are physical signs. Again, as I mentioned before, people could argue, oh, physical signs are not considered as a trauma. To me, it is. And the reason I say and argue it is because when you are thinking of a child who's 5 years old or 6 years old or 10 years old, and he was going to school, he had normal life, and now he lost his limbs and he has to go to school with no limbs. Every time this person is actually looking at the mirror, or somebody's asking him what happened, or if he's looking at his body, he is reminded of his trauma.
Yeah, of course.
If he loses his eyesight, it's the same thing. So it's really important for us to rethink of trauma and how we look at it. We cannot, in a way, categorize it or put it within the box that Western, mental health, academics has explained and be restrictive to that. It's really important when we look at the whole picture, not only on one side and leave the other side.
And so with all these multiple layers of trauma, and I'm surprised people argue that physical trauma wouldn't be a part of this, because it seems like in a lot of ways physical trauma would be the beginning of all of this for a lot of these folks. And certainly just the I'm trying to imagine just one layer of this trauma and experiencing one piece of one layer of this trauma. And, I'm thinking about, a car accident and here and a rear ender on the bridge that, leads to whiplash and sort of the long-term effects of that. And I remember I got rear-ended at a stop sign, and for the next year or so, stop signs scared me, because of that sort of fear. But to undergo bombs and missiles and bullets and buildings crushing and all these sorts of things, I don't know how one could argue those aren't part of trauma.
But it's important that we actually bring it out and point it.
Mm-hmm.
It's really important. Firmly believe that that's another part of me working in mental health, whether in the United States or looking at Gaza or war-torn countries. Really, I firmly believe that there is the importance of decolonization of mental health. And we need to look at it from a fresh and new vision than what we are used to looking. I think what works for one society not necessarily will work for another.
Yeah.
And what would work in terms of recognizing and labeling mental health for one society would not necessarily work for other. I know that we can learn from each other, but it's really important to recognize the differences that exist. And also, it's really important when we look at healing trauma and working with trauma to the structure of the society that we are working with. When we look at Middle Eastern, for example, or Palestinian society, it's a collective society that
Yes.
actually value tradition and value culture and value religion. And this is important to take in consideration when we work with the trauma versus Western society that value more of individualistic society that, focus on the individual and their achievement. For example, if we look at resilience, resilience is very strong elements in healing a trauma or any mental health. To me, from a collective society, I believe that resilience cannot just only be built by the individual themselves. It actually can be built by the collective, by the support that you receive from your family, from your relative, from your neighbors, from your society, from your school, from your mosque, from your church. That all makes the person or help the person to build resilience. Then when we come to Western perspective on how to build resilience, we focus on the individuals. And this is why many times individuals fail to actually build that resilience, especially when we look at alcoholism and drug use. That person needs all the support he can get from all his surroundings in order for them to build their resilience so they can actually cope and not relapse when they work with, when we work with, when he works on his addiction. So I think it's really, it's important that we look at mental health from a fresh perspective where we can be considerate of all the elements that exist within the society we are working with, the family system we're living with, also the individual and the individual own, in order for us to be able to help that individual to build the resilience and cope with whatever they are experiencing.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So taking into account, cultural responsiveness and sort of all those factors, I can see sort of a path forward, for folks that have escaped the war zone and, are able to sort of, for a moment, be free of the immediate literal bombing and missiles and trauma experience. What does support look like for folks that can't get out?
So currently the support is near to zero in Gaza. The reason being because there is nothing is allowed into Gaza. Fortunately, the medical, mental, and all kind is being targeted. All thing in the medical field is being targeted. Doctors, psychologists, all wise they are being killed. So it's almost like zero. There is a little hope here and there that some individuals who are willing to and they have a little training, they work with kids in the schools or in the shelters, where they can actually gather the kids and work with them through art or through music. And one of the things that they use is, I'm not sure if you're familiar with, there's a famous Palestinian traditional dancing is called dabka, which is basically through that, the music and the dabka, and that they work with the kids and they do some artwork. However, the problem is you could like collect the kids and work with them, and while you are working with them, they could get bombed. And I don't know if you heard of that or not. K and K kindergarten schools has been bombed while the kids were there. So also, as a family, if you want to send your child to one of these places, are also actually after suffering from be deprived to eat, all that stuff, to get them there, you cannot guarantee that they're going to be safe. You have to jeopardize, or you have to have in the background that they might be bombed as well. So it's really right now the situation is very, very gloomy, unfortunately. And I think it's really, as I have ended my research with on my book, most of my articles I write, I ended with this, and also my film, I ended with this. That is really the solution for mental health issues in Gaza. Not only a mental health issue, and it's not a mental health treatment, that we as psychologists, psychiatrists, we can do our best to help an individual, but really it goes back that it's a political solution. And but in order for the society to heal, this political solution needs to be in a place in order for the whole society as well as the individual to heal. And this is very, very important. Sometimes people don't comprehend that, and politicians don't comprehend that. But if we really value human being life, we really need to put an end to the wars. If we look at Palestine, if we look at Sudan currently, this is all needs to to be basically an end for the war needs to be put in a place in order for us as a human being to start healing.
You've also done some work training folks sort of on the ground during a lot of this in terms of like psychological first aid and first responders. I wonder if you could tell me a bit about that.
That was during in the 2021 war when they bombed Gaza at that time. I always thought about it this way. If I go down, because when I was in 2016, I went there. I actually tried to volunteer as well and help, but I'm one person. And if I help, I'm going to help one person. So I thought, what is the best way of actually helping Gaza is to train the first responders, to create first responders to mental health and how to work with the trauma. So I did actually in 2021 a training for 6 months on how to respond to trauma. The first, I had about 10 students, I believe. And basically I trained them what to do during the bombing and, and after the bombing, how to choose who needs help, who does not need help, and how to work with women and children. They really did. I have even like a short video about that. And they had really, after that, did a wonderful job. Individuals seeing them working with the children and seeing them working with women. And of course, we use very simple tools. We did the training over Zoom. Then after that, when they start working with cases, I would follow. So I would have a weekly meeting with them where they can tell me about the case and what they have experiencing and how they should proceed, what should they do. I will say that, they were like, beautiful individuals who really made a difference because I could see them in the groups, the women group, the children group, and how they were working with them and empowering their mental health. It was really beautiful.
Wow, that's amazing.
Of course, during 23, 24, Israeli bombed the center. And they have no center. And they tried to sort of batch it to in 2024, and they succeeded to use it for a few months. And then after that, the Israeli came and destroyed the whole area, completely erased the whole area. Right now, unfortunately, they are in the, in the tents, in the Mawasi. And they cannot do nothing right now.
Everyone's fighting to survive. Kind of shifting a bit, can you tell me a bit about some of the work you're doing sort of on this side of the pond? You've talked about having a nonprofit for Arabina refugees. I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, actually, here in the Bay Area, I work for a nonprofit organization that is affiliated with the city of San Francisco or gets funded by the city of San Francisco, where I work with all kind of population from all walk of life. The only thing about this organization, we work with underserved population, sort
Right.
of like homeless and, individuals. And I chose to do this job because I did it all my life. Very
Yeah.
passionate about working for nonprofit, and I love helping people who are underserved and underprivileged. So we work with all kind of illnesses, mental health. Some of them they suffer from anxiety, borderline, OCD, all kind.
Mm-hmm.
That's a job that I do, and very happy that I'm able to do such a job. On the other hand, I have my own nonprofit organization that works with actually immigrants and refugees and
Wow.
Middle Eastern community who actually also experience mental health illnesses, but also we are not limiting it to only mental health. We do mental health and we do also sort of services and after school program, because what we have witnessed that these children who come, like a lot of them, they come from the war country like Sudan, like Syria,
Yes.
I'm sorry, like Yemen. A lot of them are Yemenis, is basically they come to school and in the district. And funny enough, I have one of the kids who we are helping. He's 5 years old and he cannot write his name in English, but they keep pushing him through the classes. And it's really important for this child, for example, to receive support academically so he can be successful in his life. We work with the refugees who come from, for example, and they have experienced trauma or OCD. And also, we try to work there is a gap between the generations who are immigrated from Yemen or from any other countries to here versus their children who are born and raised here, some of them. And there is a gap between both generations. And we try to build more a healthier communication and a healthier relationship between the family and their
Yeah.
children so we can have hopefully healthy family, healthy society. So that's type of the work that I do.
That's incredible. You've done so much for so many people and done so much really great work. You've also experienced a lot of this trauma yourself, and you continue to sort of witness it and listen to people talk about it. What sort of things have you done to kind of heal yourself, or is this work really?
I will tell you simply, lots of people, when they see me during these times, 23, 24, 25 war, of course, my loved ones, which is among them my dad, my brother, my uncle, my only uncle that I had, and his son, and my sister, kids, and my cousins. It's not easy, of course, and you have to go through the process of grieving and being sad and all that stuff. But to be honest with you, that the thing that really helps me the most and support me the most is my spirituality. What I do for myself, of course, I do my prayers on, try on time every day, but I do extra prayer in the night time when everybody's sleeping. I make a lot of prayers for God to protect my family, protect me, myself, and also for healing, and also to the other thing I do is like I fast. I fast a couple of days a week, and I read Quran every night. It helps a lot. To be honest with you, lately, you know, um, there was things happening in Gaza, and I was really, really, really sad. So the thing that I feel like is really cleansing me and healing me is like I would put the Quran and listen to it. It helps me a lot. It really releases a lot of my sadness and do a lot of my sadness. And that's is building my connection and my relationship with God. And that's really important for me. That's is like my spirituality is the core healing point for me. In addition, I'm a firm believer that every human being is on this earth and he has a destiny, and their destiny, they will have to go through it, whether, they like it or not. They have to go through it, and I'm going through it, but it's important for us to learn acceptance. And that's one of the things I taught myself and I struggle with every day. I'm trying to conquer that is acceptance,
Dr. Iman, it's a really humbling experience talking to you today, and I feel really blessed and grateful to have had you on the podcast. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you.
In these episodes of Behavior Speak, we touch on some of the themes from today's conversation. Episode 2, Behavior Analysis in Sudan with Salma Abdurrahmadallah. Episode 197, Understanding Moral Injury with Dr. C. Richard Spates. Episode 191, Behavior Analysis in Belarus with Hanna Kalnuskaya. Episode 184, Behavior Analysis in Ukraine with Ala Maskalets. Episode 176, Religion, Spirituality, and Mental Health with Dr. Janice Parker. Episode 139, Threads of Hope, Addressing Trauma Amid War and Civil Discord with Sazan Razuk. And episodes 31 and 32, our special series on supporting refugees from Ukraine. You can find us on Instagram and TikTok and subscribe to our YouTube page at Behavior Speak. And if you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.